Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we discuss the evolving relationship of Leman Russ and Magnus the Red. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself, without spoilers. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. The Primarchs and their egos, the Primarchs and their rivalries. The two will forever go hand in hand. The truth is, the Primarchs excelled not despite their temperaments, but because of them. Indeed, the Emperor and Malcador encouraged the Primarchs to compete against each other, feeling that it would only further the Crusade's glory. And so it's no wonder some rivalries became ingrained. Some exceeded even the Emperor's desires. Some have lasted the passage of time. For me, none more so than Magnus the Red and Leman Russ. Over the years of the Heresy series, we have seen the full breadth of the Magnus-Russ feud. Within the novel A Thousand Suns by author Graham McNeill, we saw the brothers at perhaps their height, prosecuting the Crusade together within the Arc-Reach cluster. Already the tension between the two evident, serving within the same campaign for 6 months, before meeting each other face to face. However, the ties of the Primarchs were there, as we saw from Ahriman witnessing their reunion, as Russ mocked Magnus's feathered cloak and Magnus Russ's wolf pelt. It resorted to the two Primarchs jibing about killing the other. On the face of it, something unbelievable. However, we got this passage from Ahriman's view. Ahriman was horrified by this exchange. Then he saw the faintest smirk on Russ's lips, and a glint of mischief in his Primarch's glittering amber eye. He let out a tense breath, sensing a familiar pattern to their argumentative banter. There was no love lost between the brothers, even then, but there was enough. Their shared heritage uniting them. Unfortunately, it would be the same campaign that would see their relationship sour, with Magnus preventing a force of space wolves from destroying a Xeno library, eager as always to claim the knowledge for himself. The encounter eventually leading to a confrontation between the Primarchs, only stopped by the intervention of their brother Lorgar. But the damage was done, the seeds of Nicaea planted, and the vow of a reckoning made. Of course, that reckoning would be a famous one, with the burning of Prospero, the Wolf King shattering his brother's spine across his knee. For all the hatred that would come from the fight, Russ did appeal to his brother beforehand, to avoid bloodshed, as we saw from the novel Prospero Burns by author Dan Abnett. Incorrectly believing Magnus had a spy aboard his vessel, Russ spoke to this man as he would his brother, extending an offer of peace. "I'm talking to you as a personal courtesy, extended from one brother to another. What is about to happen should not be happening. You know I do not want this. You know it tears my heart to commit against you." It was perhaps the last brotherly fault that would be extended between the two, even if it would fall on deaf ears. The intention from Russ was there. The relationship between the brothers has always been a hard one to define. Hate is just far too simple a word, for we've seen there is more beyond that. And it's within the pages of the novel Battle of the Fang by author Chris Raitt that we get to see a post-heresy Magnus, reflecting on his brother Russ. Now, for those that aren't aware, the Battle of the Fang takes place barely a couple of centuries after the heresy, so it's still a time far closer to that hallowed past than the current era. However, even then the Imperium had radically changed. The Primarchs were gone, and the steady slide into darkness had begun for the Imperium. The Golden Age was truly gone. For Magnus and the sons of Russ, that hatred, that desire to finish what remained undone, still burned. Hence Magnus's invasion of Fenris. Now, I've been in the mood for talking a little Bjorn the Fell-Handed lately, so maybe we'll dive in depth to the events of the Battle of the Fang another day. But Magnus is obviously no fool, and he ensured the bulk of the Space Wolves chapter would not be present for his invasion, leaving just one great company to defend the Fang. However, Magnus himself couldn't descend to the fortress monastery until its protective walls had been destroyed. And it's as he was waiting above the world upon his vessel, we got a glimpse of how his opinion of the wolves had evolved. In being told the Space Wolves are putting up a fierce resistance, and that it may be several more days until he can descend to the battle, Magnus replied, "They're still fighting? Impressive. Though perhaps I should not be surprised. It is their expertise after all. I no longer think of them as animals' armors, though I once did. I now think of them as the purest of us all. Incorruptible, single-minded. The perfection of my father's vision." Temek looked up at his Primarch, taken aback. "You admire them?" "Admire them? Of course I do. They are unique. And even in an infinite universe, that quality is rarer than you might suppose." Now this almost feels more like the Great Crusade era Magnus than the demon Primarch he has become. It's really surprising to me to see such a glimpse behind the bitterness, to see this admission of, dare I say, as Magnus did, admiration. I've always felt the wolves were made specifically for a purpose, that there was a very real reason Russ was the Emperor's executioner, why the Emperor trusted him so implicitly, that somehow he knew that Russ would never turn. And I've mentioned before how I feel the wolves seemingly have an anti-warp nature, a specialism if you will. And it feels like here that Magnus has almost come to think the same way himself. I now think of them as the purest of us all, incorruptible, single-minded, the perfection of my father's vision. That's pretty high praise coming from someone that despises Russ so much. Sure, the description may be masked as loyal lapdogs more often than not, but as we've seen from the Imperium's history, loyalty is a precious commodity. To have one that you can never doubt, no matter what, that's a valuable resource indeed. Perhaps in being just those few centuries removed from the heresy, there was still that part of the old Magnus that he hadn't been completely consumed by chaos just yet. Not quite lost to being that out-and-out villain we would see in the future. However, later, once finally able to join his son's assault within the depths of the Fang, Magnus's wrath was absolute, laying waste to anyone who stood before him. And it's during this encounter he comes before a gargantuan statue of Russ. Admitting it's a particularly good likeness, Magnus grew himself in stature to look his brother eye to eye. No pun intended there, Magnus. And here we got another insight revealed as he spoke to his brother. "Do you remember what you said to me as we fought before the Pyramid of Photep? Do you remember the words you used?" "I do. As I recall, your face was tortured. Imagine that. The master of wolves, his ferocity twisted into grief. And yet you still carried out your duty. You always did what was asked of you. So loyal, so tenacious. Truly, you were the attack dog of the Emperor." Magnus lost his smile. "You took no pleasure in what you did. I knew that then, and I know it now. But all things change, my brother. I'm not the same as I was, and you're... well, let us not mention where you are now." It's quite rare to be given Magnus truly reflecting on the encounter with Russ. Even more so here, to see that revelation of the conflict within the Wolf King. That for all the rage and anger of their fight, truly fighting to the death, Magnus could still see the angst within his brother. Something I doubt no other witness could. And again, you get that impression of a reluctant admiration. You always did what was asked of you. So loyal, so tenacious. Truly you were the attack dog of the Emperor. How different things could have been if Magnus and Russ could have just put their differences aside. If they hadn't left that rivalry fester from the days of the Great Crusade. How many other brothers could have learnt the same lesson? Rogel and Perturabo, Leman and Lorgar. If they all could have just put their differences aside. If they were all raised together on Terra, beneath their father's guidance. For Magnus and Russ, they were just too instinctively different. Russ was made to act, Magnus to question. Magnus would rip the statue of his brother from the wall, symbolically smashing its back over his knee, a dark mirror to Prospero. The difference here rather than then is that Magnus continues to tell his brother he will take pleasure in the destruction of Russ's home, the scattering of his sons. Whereas Russ may have not enjoyed his duty, Magnus would. For all Magnus's vaunted knowledge, his claims of superiority, it's clear that base instinctive desire of revenge, no matter what Magnus may say, is there, motivating it all, stoking those fires. And as Magnus stands there smiling defiantly at the ruined statue of his brother, there's perhaps the most telling insight of all, as we're told how perhaps Ahriman alone would have been able to see the truth behind his Primarch smile, to the pain it masks. Magnus is lost to chaos, his soul now given to Tzeentch. But no matter how far from his former self he may have fallen, would continue to fall, there will always be that tiniest trace of the Primarch that was. As we would see Mortarion react almost 10,000 years later to the possibility of being face to face with his father, the Primarchs will never be able to escape their past. They will never be able to eradicate it. It will always define them, no matter how much they claim otherwise. For Magnus, those scars will always remain. He will never be able to eradicate them, try as he might. The pain behind Magnus's smile is most likely a combination of everything. The recollection of losing to Russ, the loss of his home, the chastisement by his father, and most likely, regret that he and Russ let it all come to this. For all the great insights into Magnus we've had, these few brief passages for me were some of the most insightful. Seeing how he has evolved in his feelings and recollections as the years have passed, but also how it still defines him entirely. Destiny and fate are a strange concept within the grimdark universe, something more akin to the dark powers of chaos. However, for me, it really feels like these two brothers will come face to face one more time. That the Wolf King Leman Russ and his brother Magnus the Red will speak again before it's all said and done. But as always everyone, what do you think? Why do you feel that Magnus has come to change his opinion of the Space Wolves chapter? Why do you feel that he's now come to admire them in a way, rather than simply writing them off as animals? What do you feel changed Magnus's opinion? And are you surprised to see it come from the Chaos Elevated Primarch? When it comes to his brother Russ, do you feel he is all consumed by hatred? Or that somewhere, no matter how small it may be, there's still that part of the Primarch that laments the loss of his brother's relationship? That he knows if the two could have just set their differences aside, that it all may never have come to this. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. With that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.